Black Robe Regiment. I know. Drive time dialectics. Y'all expect a rant. You might get one. I don't know. It depends on how I'm feeling. So, anyway, yeah. I'm driving home in the early hours of what is supposed to be a major snow event. And as I pointed out to someone else, the fear porn about the weather in Minnesota just it amazes me the number of people who will just get absolutely petrified because meteorologists tell them that the weather is going to deliver snow to Minnesota in a in a month that is known for snow, and how we react to it, and we wring our hands and bite our nails and nearly pass out from fear that we might get 6 to 10 inches of snow. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that, guys. I'm sorry. Hope I didn't blow your ears out. I have really loud, obnoxious sneezes. But anyway, while you're at it, like, comment, and share, and then send this one on out to your friends, because I think this is going to maybe get you thinking. And I know that some of you, hi guys, hi Chad, hi Sarah. I know that many of you think about this stuff already, but thanks, Sarah. I'm going to try. I do try to have these conversations with people all across the board, philosophically, when it comes to politics and worldview. But as many of you know, I have talked an awful lot about the idea of back to blue at all costs, and here's something that I've been running into, and this is why it's important to me. I'm going to do an adjustment so you guys can catch my most beautiful of faces. Truly have a face for radio. And I have been watching both videos in defense of law enforcement and the blue, and videos from those that hate the blue, and I've also been watching videos of people do not know how to drive in Rochester, Minnesota, by the way. And even videos that kind of are somewhat neutral in their perspective of law enforcement, where they really try to maintain a I'm going to reserve judgment type of situation as far as each individual case that they're dealing with on their breakdown of the interactions. And one of the really good channels for that is a channel called Audit the Audit. If you haven't gone over and checked out Audit the Audit, what Audit the Audit does is really, frankly, they look at both sides of an auditing encounter or a recorded encounter between law enforcement and regular public people here in the Republic, and kind of gives a grade of, A, B, C, D, E, or F for both parties. And they don't go into it with an axe to grind against law enforcement or an axe to grind against the public. And, kind of like what you see with these anti-cop watcher types, or with the cop watchers, because there are many cop watchers who are all cops are bastard types. And I can't stand that. And they do things that are intentionally provocative, like jumping out of their vehicles or walking up to the scene and yelling and screaming profanities at the police, and intentionally drive around flipping cops off. Now, which is perfectly free to do. You have every right in the world to swear at cops. You have every constitutionally enshrined liberty in the world to flip cops off. There's nothing that law enforcement can do about it. And as I point out to people all the time when they say to me, well, when you flip the cop off, you get what you deserve. I've literally had people say that. Well, no, you don't. You don't get what you deserve, as I've seen in many of these situations. Sneeze and then choke to death, I guess, on the way home, I guess. Many of these people who who have that response feel like if you flip a cop off, you deserve to get pulled over. And my response to that is very often, if I'm walking down my street and I've had a conflict with my neighbor for years and I flip him off, what's his recourse? He doesn't get to detain you. He doesn't get to stop you from walking down the street or pull you over in your vehicle and read you the riot act, right? Why is it that flipping off a cop should get you in trouble? In fact, flipping off a cop should be more protected than flipping off your neighbor. Public servants. Now, there again, I'm not advocating for it. I don't think you should run around flipping off cops. I think it's bad form, and I do believe in being forceful as far as you're standing up for yourself in interacting with law enforcement. You don't talk to cops. You don't give them any answers. You provide only what the law requires. So if you're driving down the road and you get pulled over, there's a little thing on the back of your driver's license that says that you consent. There's an implied consent that you will produce driver's license, you will produce proof of insurance, and proof of registration. That's there. You don't want to do that? Don't drive. I know there's arguments about the constitutionality of whether or not driver's licenses can be required and whether or not you're engaging in commerce or if you're merely traveling, and on and on and on and on and on. Not here to have that argument. But all of those things aside, when we sit back and as is the case in many situations, I have watch people who interact who are doing the right thing. They're recording the police, and I assert that you always record police in every interaction that you have with them, or if you have an opportunity to record an interaction that someone else is having with law enforcement, you should be recording it. You should. Don't insert yourself into a traffic stop. You don't insert yourself into the scene. You don't tell the people how to respond or what not to say or how to say it, or tell them, interject and tell them they don't have to comply with a request to perform, to provide information. You let them handle that on their own, but you provide video coverage of that. That to me is wise, especially when it relates to how you interact with police. But one of the things that I keep seeing is, hey, cops will do this. If you don't answer a question or you don't want to give information, and this happens commonly on traffic stops, you might tell me where you're coming from today. I don't want to answer that question. Well, why not? Do you have something to hide? I'm just not obligated to tell you where I'm coming from. Well, where are you going? I'm not obligated to tell you where I'm going. Please conduct the purpose for your traffic stop. Do what you're going to do, and then let us be about our business. Well, I'm just asking you where you're going. What do you have to hide? And what I've seen in these interactions is, one, the cop doesn't have a right to ask you where you're coming from. They don't have the authority. They have the right, but they don't have the authority to demand that you answer that question. They also don't have the authority to demand that you tell them where you're going. Okay? And I don't care if you just came from buying controlled substances. You don't need to tell them that. But what I've been seeing from people who are recording the cops is this immediate defensiveness that comes to them. And by defensiveness, they defend their actions by prefacing any comments that they make with, hey, look, I'm on your side. I just don't answer questions. I find that troubling, and here's why. I'm not on anyone's side of my own when I'm interacting with law enforcement. And you shouldn't be either, because you have to understand that when you're having a non-consensual interaction with law enforcement, and there are consensual interactions and there are non-consensual interactions. If you're having a non-consensual interaction with law enforcement, you are not on their side. If a cop pulls in behind you and pulls you over, whether it's for failing to indicate a turn or a lane change soon enough, or speeding, or light brake light's not working, headlight burned out, whatever it is, that is non-consensual. And in that moment, the cop's not on your side and you aren't on his or hers. I'm not on the side of law enforcement in any situation, but especially as it regards me. Does that make any sense at all to anyone? Because for the conservative base, the default position for many conservatives is I'm on, and I said this before, I'm law and order, I'm on the side of police. You're not. The police are not on your side in the United States anymore. And if they ever were, but they're not for sure on your side now. That's not the job they've been hired to do. In fact, the job that police have been hired to do is to be on the side of the state. The job of law enforcement in the United States today, from the most, how do I want to say this? The FBI to the federal state level, right? And someday I'll do a video about why I refer to the federal state, the state, the county state, and the municipal state. I'll do that, okay? Why I don't say the federal government, the state government. It's the state in all of her varied forms. But the role of law enforcement in today's America, the republic that we are very rapidly seeing dissolve right around us, all over the place. The role of law enforcement is to be on the side of the state. That's their duty. I had Steve Friend on, former FBI agent, on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, Sunday night, depending on where you're at. And that was on the 19th of February. And here we are, the 21st of February. And in that interview, I posited the thought, or not the thought, but what I'm working on, which is constitutionally optimized policing, COP, where there's, I'm working yet in the fullest sense. I'm talking to different elected servants at varying levels to tie funding of police, and I'm not a defund the police person, because when you see defunding the police, what you see is what's happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul. They're burning to the ground. The crime rates have skyrocketed. Violent crime and thefts and all of that have just absolutely skyrocketed. But with the COP proposal, constitutionally optimized policing, funding of law enforcement will be directly tied to a requirement that there will be continuing education for law enforcement in constitutional cases, constitutional law, and in studying and knowing the Constitution, especially as it pertains to the Bill of Rights, First, Second, Fourth, and Fifth Amendments, and even the Ninth and Tenth in particular. Law enforcement as well, and their liberties. Those things are paramount. In fact, I don't think anybody should be even considered for a law enforcement training program if they cannot write long-form essays about, specifically about several portions of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But what we've done now is we've replaced duty to the Constitution and duty to we the people with duty to the state. All that law enforcement has become is a tool of enforcement to the state. They're no longer peace officers. They're no longer peacekeepers. They are literally policy enforcers. Police. Policy enforcement. That's it. End of story. So they're not on your side. And so when you're interacting, especially in a non-consensual situation with law enforcement, you have got to ask yourselves, whose side am I on? And if the first thing that you want to say to a cop is, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, I'm on your side, but no, it needs to be, I'm on my side. I'm on my side, and my side is the side of the Constitution. My side is the side of the right to not self-impose my ground and say, no, you don't get to search a vehicle without a warrant. And that, my friends, is where most people run into their problem. because they'll say or utter some variation of, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm on your side. I'm on your side. Look, I'm not against you. I'm on your side." You're not, because that is an adversarial situation, my friends. When a cop pulls you over, when a cop detains you, and they tell you that they have RAS, reasonable articulable suspicion, for why they're pulling you over, why they're stopping you, or probable cause, or you know, and with RAS, reasonable articulable suspicion, especially if you're just walking down the street, and there again, there are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of videos out there where people are just walking down the street and cops are pulling up behind them. And the one just broke the other day, and I know many of you have seen it, of a guy who's walking early morning hours, walking to work. This deputy, I think it was in North Carolina, and I could be wrong, this deputy pulls up, tells him, "Come over here." The guy has no idea what's going on. He won't tell him what's going on. He tells the guy, "Put your hands behind your back." He won't tell him what his reasonable articulable suspicion is that this guy should be detained, and he orders him to identify himself. But for the record, there is no state really anymore in the United States that is a stop and ID state. You can't just be walking down the road and have a cop pull up, or it's a violation process. It's a violation of your right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And that, my friends, is why you're not on the cop's side. Because I know it sounds horrible to many of you. I know there are people who are going to hear this, of the 12 who watch this, there are at least 2 of you are going to go, that's not how I was raised. I'm on their side. I comply. And that's the other part of this question. Who is on whose side? I hear this all the time. Okay, 10 to 12. Thank you. If you are really thinking about this, really thinking about this, you have a right. You have a right. You have a liberty, the constitutionally enshrined liberty, to I'm not saying fight. You don't just comply. You don't have to just comply with everything that a cop says. And this is what I hear over and 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 over. And I know I'm over exaggerating over and over and over again, but that's my point. I hear this constantly. If you would just comply, this would have been done. You could have handed me your ID. You could have told me where you were going. You could have told me what you were doing. You could have alleviated the suspicion that I had. And ladies and gentlemen, that's you being on the wrong side. That's the cop being on the wrong side. When you comply with an unreasonable, unlawful demand from law enforcement, you're not on his side. You're not on his side. And just because you don't want to deal with the delay, and remember, law enforcement has an obligation to execute their duty in a reasonable amount of time. The courts have, especially on traffic stops, they do not get to extend a traffic stop or a detainment to try and fabricate a reason to arrest you or keep you in custody. They don't. They just don't. They cannot stretch out. I see this again, over and over again. Can we search your vehicle? Well, no, you may not. I heard just recently an interaction. No, you may not. Oh, I knew you were going to do that. I guess this is the route we're going to go. So what's he do? He immediately calls a canine unit to come and sniff the guy's car. Why? Because he didn't allow the cop to do what the cop wanted to do, which was to ransack his vehicle, looking for a reason to charge this person with a crime and keep him in custody, to keep him detained. You don't have to comply with your vehicle being searched. And if the answer is if you would have just complied, you wouldn't have had to sit there for 20 minutes to wait for a canine unit to show up. That's not reasonable. And that's not the cop being on your side. That's the cop being on his side and on the side of enforcing the policies and the statutes of the state, even though he has no reason to believe you violated them. Here's another one. Well, I got out with you because you're suspicious. What makes me suspicious? And any of you who've watched auditing videos, show me suspicious in criminal code. Is that a misdemeanor, petty misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, or is it a felony? What level of felony is it? Just because someone finds what I'm doing to be suspicious doesn't give you reasonable articulable suspicion that I did something wrong. And if your response to that is hey, look, I'm not trying to cause you a problem. I'm on your side. You're wrong. You're wrong. And I know this is hard. I know this is hard for so many of you. But that's the issue. What they're counting on, and I did a video a couple of weeks ago called Condition to Comply. The entire government indoctrination system is set up to teach you to comply to any person and any directive that any person who is in a perceived position of authority over you to do what they say. That's the end of discussion. The government indoctrination system, the state indoctrination system that we euphemistically refer to as public education, is only set up to make you a slavish, compliant sheep. That's it. That's it. Period. End of discussion. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Do that right away, sir. Do that right away, ma'am. All throughout your school years. That's what you were taught. And I'm not talking about mass chaos and like criminal anarchy in the school systems. I don't think that should be treating people disrespectfully by any stretch of the imagination. I think respect is a lost art in the United States today. By far a lost art in the United States today. I've had young punk kids say that to me, just on the street, as just a regular old schmo walking down the street, I've had young punk kids say the most disrespectful and horrible things to me, which is indicative that they're not being taught respect at home. But that doesn't mean that we should be indoctrinating children in the government education system, the state indoctrination system, to be completely compliant with anybody who's in a position of perceived authority. Because I have no authority over me in the United States. None. And I know there's an argument. Is the Constitution an authority over me, or is it an authority over the state? I tend to err on the side that first, it's the authority over the state that establishes the parameters and the dictates of what the state can and cannot do. But it is also the supreme law of the land, and therefore I am responsible to adhere to the Constitution as well. But then underneath the Constitution is us. And then underneath us are every people who is in a position of public servant, whether they be elected or appointed to that position. Sheriff or chief of police, deputy or beat cop, detective or county commissioner, mayor or governor, senator or president, Supreme Court justice or local magistrate. They are subservient to us. So I'm not on their side. And I'm especially not on their side in a non-consensual interaction. They have a duty to me. That's it. And I don't have a problem saying, hey, look, you work for me. I don't have a problem with that. And I will say that when the person I'm interacting with has given me cause to say it in a way to make a point. Go back to January 21st with the safety team person at the University System of Rochester at the Heinz Center. She deserved what I said to her when I told her, you work for us, lady, because that's exactly the truth. What I don't like is when people throw it in a law enforcement officer's face, in a peace officer's face of, I pay your paycheck. The reality of I pay your paycheck is that most of us have to work hour after hour after hour after hour to just have a portion of what we're saying or what we're paying go to pay the salaries of law enforcement. And don't think for a minute that law enforcement is underpaid in the United States, folks. The captains at the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, make upwards of $120,000 to $150,000 a year. How many hours do you have to work so that person can be employed? Don't even mention what the chief deputies and the sheriffs make, right? And then go down to the line staff, the patrol staff, the detention staff. That's just in Olmsted County. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in just one or two organizations alone. So yeah, you pay taxes through the threat of force, and the people that you pay taxes through the threat of force for are also then tasked with coming and getting you if you don't pay your taxes the way they want them paid. Keep that in mind. But there are things you don't need to bust out. You don't need to flip the cops off when you see them. You don't need to bust out with, you need to answer my questions because you work for me. I pay your salary. Okay? We don't need that. It's a needless inflammatory access to salary. So, like I heard one cop who's, he's a jerk to the guy he was talking to, but when he quipped it, he was right. Then I guess I'm a great entrepreneur because I found a way to pay myself. I mean, he was being a jerk, but he wasn't wrong. Now, I want to go back to this one more time and emphasize this again. They're going to buy you a cup of coffee. I don't know why you would, but you do it. That's consensual, okay? I also want to point out that's not going to win you any points. That cop's not going to let you off just because you bought him a cup of coffee, because if he does let you off just because you bought him a cup of coffee, now you bribed a cop, which is why I believe every law enforcement officer out there, when somebody offers to buy him a meal or buy him coffee, or the gas station offers to give him free coffee, the cop needs to say, no, I won't take that. Because they should be avoiding any appearance of impropriety. Cops shouldn't be getting discounts on anything. And I'm going to be doing a video about a place in Rochester that does give cops something for free. For free, mind you. And I'm not talking a $1.50 cup of coffee. I'm talking like something that would cost the rest of us a lot of money. Especially considering most cops, especially in my neck of the woods, make a whole hell of a lot more money than the average blue-collar or even retail worker in the state of Minnesota. They're not hurting. You will not find any law enforcement officer on food stamps. You will not find any law enforcement officer on welfare. You will not find any law enforcement officer in the state of Minnesota, especially in my region, that has got to go to the government and say, please, I need help paying my bills. And if they are at that rate, then you know the economy's bad, and there are a lot of other people who are hurting way worse. They make a great amount of money from the taxpayers. So, once again, there is, outside of consensual, hey, how are you today? You have, every interaction you have with law enforcement is non-consensual. Every interaction you have, you should be. That's not true. Isn't that sort of what their job is by design? You'd have to explain to me what you mean, betrayed king, by that. What part's not true? Anyway, anywho, I can't really answer that unless you explain to me what you're referring to. There is no such thing as a consensual interaction with law enforcement outside of, hey, how are you today? That's really it. When you're stopped by law enforcement, that is a non-consensual stop. And there again, what part of what I was saying was wrong about the taxpayers' teeth? There is no such thing as a consensual interaction with law enforcement. Hey, Grumpy, excuse me. Grumpy, whatever. He goes by two different names, one of them on social media and one here on YouTube. What we're dealing with law enforcement is we have this tendency to want to appease them, so we'll say things even when we're not giving them exactly what they want. Oh, I see what you're saying, Betrayed King. I'll get back to that in just a second. There is no such thing as a consensual interaction where you are a subject of a traffic stop or an investigation or a detainment. That is not consensual, and at that point, you are not on the cop's side. You are not on their side, and they are clearly not on yours. And we have to be aware of that. We need to be well aware of that. And when you say to a cop, well, that's why I do these drive time dialectics, Betrayed King, is to interact with my audience, and I can't do what I would do if I was streaming from home. So I love when people interact and ask questions, and love it when people share out my stuff, to be honest with you, because this is helping make up for what I lost when I lost my job in the law enforcement world. The more views I get, I make a few more pennies. So I guess I'm on a form of welfare too. But you guys want to see what I'm following? This is always fun. So anyway, yeah, there we go. I'm gonna have to way back off on this one because the snow is really fine. So don't ever look and think that you have to say to the officer, look, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, I'm on your side, because you're not. In that situation, it's an adversarial situation, and you're not on his side. You're on your side, and you're on the side of the Constitution, and he damn sure better be on the side of the Constitution as well, but most of the time they're not. Not in every situation, but most of the time they're not. And when they're not, it is you against them. There again, I'm not advocating for violence. If they tell you that no matter what you say, you're going to jail, you don't fight. But you do record. You do record. And you better be asking them, do you have your body cam on? Do you have this? And let them know that they're on notice, that you're going to be requesting body cam footage, and that you will be fighting whatever they're charging you with in court. I don't care if it's a speeding ticket, a seatbelt ticket, a headlight ticket. I don't care what it is. Let them know. Like if the accusation is that you didn't put your turn signal on soon enough, tell them, I will be requesting your dash cam footage and your body cam footage. I will be taking this to court. And you also should be investing in some form of dash cam that's both rear facing and forward facing, and it's not hard to find. They have inexpensive ones on Amazon for like $35, $45, $55, $65. They're not going to be the greatest things in the world. They're not going to sync to your vehicle, and they're not going to necessarily tell you exactly how fast you were going. But it's going to help you. It can help you. Oh, sir, you crossed the yellow line several times. I have a dash cam right here that says I didn't. And I will bring that to court. Because you're not on their side. When you were stopped, you're not on the cop's side. I don't care what you're doing. You're not on their side. And they aren't on yours. And the quicker people wake up to that, and the quicker people realize that, the better it's going to get, believe it or not. It's going to get better. It's going to be ugly at first. There's going to be some tension, but it's going to get better because it's going to start pushing cops and pushing people in the law enforcement world to ultimately start treating us differently. It really is. It's not enough anymore to trust that body cam footage and dash cam footage by itself is going to protect you. We've seen this over and over and over again. Especially if it doesn't exonerate the cop, they won't release it until they absolutely don't have a choice. And it's why they make it expensive to get as much data as you can. They make it as expensive as they can legally for you to get it. And that's the problem with compliance as well. Just take the ticket and fight it in court. Well, or take the charge and fight it in court. Most of us can't afford to go to court. Most of us can't afford to take a day off. Most of us can't afford to go and pay the court fees and all of that. But if we overwhelm the system I don't care if you think you're guilty. You don't admit that. You never admit that. Ever, 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 ever. You never, ever, ever admit that you did something wrong. Because they're not on your side. Now, I'm going to bring up this issue. I do not believe that anybody who works actually works, whether we agree with the service that they're providing or not. Anybody who works in the public sector is not on welfare. And let's be frank, welfare recipients don't pay or provide a service. They're not providing any service. So the guy at the DMV, even though he's a jerk, he's not on welfare. He's not a welfare recipient any more than if somebody in the military is a welfare recipient. Whether or not we agree with whatever war our war hawks on both the left and the right are trying to get us enmeshed in, the person in the military isn't a welfare recipient. And in fact, most of the time, men and women with families in the military aren't making enough money to feed their families and pay their bills, so some of them do have to be on food stamps. That, ladies and gentlemen, should really piss you off. That should piss you off. You want to be offended by something, be offended by the fact that there are people out there who provide no service in the public sector at all, other than to take your tax money from you, who are making exponentially more money than even a private, and sometimes more than a long-term non-commissioned officer is making. And I'll take a jerk of a non-commissioned officer or a commissioned officer in the military who treats his people, barks orders at him all day long, and is rude and mean. I'd take him or her over anybody in the tax assessor's office of any county anywhere. And they aren't making the kind of money that most of those people make working in those offices. So no, I don't look at those people who are working. They're putting their hours in, whether I agree with what they're doing during all of that time or not. They're not welfare recipients. The welfare recipients, especially in the law enforcement world, are the guys who beat somebody up, and the bosses, the administrators know that they beat this person up, but they put them out on paid administrative leave pending the results of the investigation. That's welfare. Now, did I get paid administrative leave when I got put out on administrative leave? Yep. Did I deserve it? Yep, because I didn't do anything at all to deserve to be put on paid administrative leave. It was literally the crucible. It was a witch hunt. And like my guest on the show on Sunday, Steve, months and months and months and months and months, no paid administrative leave. He was out there hanging in the breeze. But he was smart, and he saw it coming, and he and his wife saved up. But she ended up losing her job under mysterious circumstances as well. So we have to understand, we pay their salaries in the sense that we pay taxes. Yes. Do they work for us? Yes, they're supposed to be working for us. That is the technical reality. We, the people, are the employer. The state's not the employer. The state works for us. Should be working for us, but we know it's working against us now. The state's against the government. And there again, there will be a video coming out in the future about this. The state is against the government. End of story. Because we, the people, are the government. But we shouldn't be going up to them and saying, you're a welfare recipient. I think that's disrespectful. And quite honestly, it's even disrespectful to some welfare recipients and people who do receive some state aid, because some of them have been pushed into a situation where they can't help it. I know many veterans who are on disability. They don't want to be on disability, but they're on disability because of the position they've been put in by an out-of-control state. So let's not treat people simply with disrespect because we're pissed off about the kind of work they do or what they do or even how they're treating people. And yes, there is a certain amount to be said for you will get what you give. I can have a very reasonable conversation with somebody in law enforcement, even if we're disagreeing about a situation, if they're being civil and interacting with civility and calm and discourse and decent discourse. And I have a video of that from the Rochester Police Department in 2021, where I have a very gracious and respectful conversation with a sergeant and a school resource officer about a situation that I believe they were wrong about. And I told them they were wrong. But we had a very gracious and civil conversation. And then January 21st of 2023, I had another conversation where I was incredibly direct and incredibly vocal and incredibly forceful in my vocal opposition to what they were doing and saying, because they were wrong. They were absolutely wrong. But this all comes back to us understanding and recognizing, my friends, that when you are having an interaction with law enforcement, that is not just you saying, hi, have a good day, hope you're safe or whatever. And we should be hoping for them to go home safely. I mean, I'm following the snowplow. Am I pissed off that he's probably making a hell of a lot more money working overtime, doing what he's doing than what I get paid? Sure. And to some degree, it is irritating that I have to work so hard. He's providing a service. He's making it so my road is not nearly as bad as it would be if he wasn't out here. He's not a welfare recipient, and I'm not going to treat him with a lack of respect just because he's working for the state of Minnesota or the state of Fillmore County, whatever. Until he does something to me, be it intentionally or through negligence, that causes me to perceive that what he's doing is disrespectful. And that's how we should be interacting with law enforcement. We don't need to be intentionally disrespectful and calling them names, but we do need to recognize that, one, they're not on our side. Two, we're not on their side. And three, our duty is to hold them accountable to the Constitution of the United States. That's it. That's our duty. That is our duty, is to hold people in the public sector, especially people that should be peace officers or peacekeepers, but we now call law enforcement, these cops, these deputies, these local cops. We have a duty to hold them accountable to the Constitution. And when we can do that, and we can do it in a way and in a level that is respectful, maybe sometimes it's not without conflict, we can make the changes that need to happen. But if our response to every single person who's interacting with law enforcement is, if you would have just complied, this would have gone better for you. If you would have just done what you should have done, this would have gone better for you. Next time a cop tells you to do something, even if he's wrong, you do it. No. Here again, I'm not talking about fighting an arrest. If a cop looks at you and tells you you're going to jail, you ask why, and you make it clear that you are being arrested against your will. No one's arrested because they're like, hey, you know what, please arrest me. Well, actually, that does happen sometimes. But you make it clear that the arrest you believe is invalid, and then you fight that. You do fight that, but you don't get into a fisticuffs or a running battle or whatever, and you don't fight them when they're trying to arrest you. And by fight, I mean actually fight. Turning around and pulling away and going, I don't understand why you're putting me in handcuffs, is not fighting. That's a high-stress situation, and the cop needs to know how to interact with that. They need to know how to deal with that without, like we saw here a few days ago, picking the guy up and slamming him down on his head and his shoulder and cracking his cranium and dislocating his shoulder. And then to find out later on that he didn't even match the description of the person they said they were looking for. That's a tyrant. But you don't fight. You do not fight. That you fight in court. And you never admit guilt. And you never tell them, but look, I'm on your side. Because you're not. And they don't think that they're on your side either. There is not a cop in the world who pulls you over and the first thing he says is, look, my name is Officer Schmurfenderts from Podunk City, badge number 1234, and I'm here because I'm on your side by writing you this speeding ticket. That's not what's on their mind. What's on their mind is, I'm pulling you over for speeding and I have a job to do. Now, how you interact with me right now is going to determine whether or not you get a ticket. I believe every officer does have discretion on how they enforce the law. But when we think that by sucking up to the cop and saying, look, I'm on your side, I'm not here to give you a hard time, that somehow that's going to give us a break, that's instilling in these officers that they can do and say and treat you however they want to treat you. And as long as you comply and you're sheepish and you're meek and you're mild and it's yes, sir, and no, sir, anything you want, sir, I'm on your side, sir, and then they let you off with a warning, that is a power play. That's manipulation. That's narcissism. As long as you do what I want you to do, we're on each other's side. No. The minute you get stopped driving or walking down the street or filming in public, whatever the case might be. Hey, if you're just popping in, share this out. Put it out on your social media, by the way. Whatever the case might be, they are not your buddy. They're not your friend. They are an adversary. And their goal is to hem you up on something every single time. Now, this was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but the drive was a lot longer. And I like interacting with you guys. You're a lot of fun. So, yeah, this Drive Time Dialectics is about to come to an end. But I do want to remind you, I do absolutely want to remind you, any non-consensual interaction you have with law enforcement, they are not on your side, and you damn sure better not be leading off with, hey, look, I'm not giving you a hard time, I'm on your side. Because you are setting yourself up to answer any question, to do anything that they tell you to do, and you are not obligated to do that. Are there certain things? Cop tells you to get out of the vehicle and you're driving? Absolutely. You better get out of the vehicle. You can ask why, and if he says, well, it's for my safety because I want to go home safe at the end of the night, say, okay, you know what, fine, because there are court rulings that say they can do that. But if he looks at your passenger and says, I need your ID, passenger's not obligated to ID, because you know what, the courts have ruled that on that as well. The courts have ruled that passengers in a vehicle don't have to provide ID unless there's reasonable articulable suspicion that your passenger is a criminal, is about to commit a crime, has committed a crime, or did commit a crime, or may commit a crime. There again, that's very subjective. And just saying, well, we want to see if your passenger has warrants. They're not obligated to take part in that. And they don't get to detain that person for not producing ID. You, as the driver, do need to produce ID. But your passengers don't. But that doesn't mean everybody's a jerk and says, no, I'm not getting out of the car. Sure. Absolutely. Get out of the car. But you don't need to give ID. And you don't need to say, I'm on your side. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. Because they're there giving you a hard time. They're giving you the hard time. You didn't ask for that. It wasn't your idea to have now, if you're doing 75 and a 45, you kind of asked for that. But you be compliant in as much as the law requires, only as much as the law requires. Not just because the officer says you have to do this. Because just because an officer tells you have to do something doesn't mean you have to. End of story. They don't like hearing this. That's why I've lost all of my police friends, honestly. I have a family member who hasn't talked to me in months now. It's hard for them because they've been conditioned to make you compliant. They've been conditioned to think they are the authority. So, my friends, if you enjoyed this at all, in this little conversation that we're having, share it out. And if you don't like it, share it out, because I'd love to get feedback from the people who are prone to jump all over me and accuse me of being a leftist or a cop hater, because I find that funny, actually, because it's not true. I'm neither a leftist nor a cop hater. I'm just not your traditional normie con, especially here in the state of Minnesota. So, my friends, share this out, like it. If you think of it and you're interested and you're watching this after the fact, or even now, and you want to throw me a couple of dollars in a super chat or super thank you, I will be on your side. So until next time, my friends, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And Sic Semper. Oh, and by the way, tune in to Vet Nation tonight on YouTube at 7:15 Central, and also over on Right American Media, which I'm a Upper Midwest region. Next time, my friends, Sic Semper Tyrannis.